It was a quiet March morning, sunlight just beginning to slip through the kitchen blinds, the scent of fresh coffee curling in the air. I opened my laptop like I did every day, expecting a sweet update, maybe a photo of the wedding dress Sophie had chosen, or a note about the catering menu. For a moment, I was just a mother excited for her daughter's big day. Then I saw it. No subject line. Just her name. Sophie. Sitting in my inbox like a full stop. I had already sent $30,000 to help make her dream wedding a reality. I thought I was part of it. But the first word of her email, just mom, no dear, no warmth, read like a verdict. They had decided I wouldn't be coming to the wedding. I would be watching from home, through a screen. Should be just like being there, lol. A joke. But it cut like a clean, cold knife. My name is Lorraine Mitchell. I'm 61 years old, a widow, and I live in a peaceful suburb in Vermont. I've worked as a senior administrator at a medical clinic for almost 20 years, raised 2 children, Sophie, my daughter who just turned 34, and Ryan, my 31-year-old son, and spent most of my adult life making sure they never had to face the same hardships I did. Last Tuesday, I received an email that changed everything. It was from Sophie. No subject line, just her name sitting in my inbox. I smiled before opening it, thinking maybe it was a quick update or a sweet note. Before her big day, we had just spoken about her wedding plans. A few weeks ago, I had already contributed $30,000 to help her book the venue, secure a photographer, and reserve the florist she had adored since her college days. But when I opened the email, the smile vanished. Mom, the email started. No dear mom. Just mom, like a label. Sophie explained that she, along with her fiancé Nathan and his family, had finalized the guest list for the ceremony in Aspen. And after much thought, they decided it was best for me to watch the wedding via live stream, not in person. She added that Nathan's mother was particular about the guest count and wanted to keep things intimate in the end. She included a line that felt like salt in an open wound. If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Zoom link we created. Should be just like being there, lol. I stared at that screen for a long time. My coffee grew cold. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't cry. Something inside me quietly shifted, like the ground had cracked open but I was still standing. I replied with just 4 words, sure, enjoy your big day. No emotion, no argument, just a quiet withdrawal. And I knew deep down that those 4 words would echo louder than any scream. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want tears. I wanted clarity. I wanted the silence to speak for itself. I closed the laptop, finished my now cold coffee, and got ready for work like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That was the day. I stopped pretending that my sacrifices meant anything to my daughter. That was the day everything began to change. The drive to the office that morning was quiet. Vermont's early spring air still held a chill, but I barely noticed. My mind kept circling the same question. How did we get here? I've spent 19 years working at Pinebrook Medical. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and stability was what I needed after my husband died. Suddenly, when the kids were still teenagers, I remember standing in front of our old washing machine, bills spread across the counter, trying to figure out how to pay for both groceries and Sophie's upcoming college deposit. Back then, I didn't think twice about giving up my weekends. I took extra shifts, canceled vacations, skipped birthdays. I told myself there'll be time for me later. There were nights I sat in the dark kitchen, too tired to cry, whispering promises to no one in particular. Just a little longer, just until they're settled. I stitched stability out of thin air, holding everything together with willpower and a stack of unpaid bills. I convinced myself it was all part of love. Quiet love. The kind that folds laundry at midnight and chooses needs over wants, every single time. There never was. Every penny I saved went to Sophie and Ryan. When Sophie changed majors twice and needed more credits, I paid. When she moved across the country for a short-lived job in Chicago, I covered her deposit and plane ticket. When she cried through her second breakup at 29, I flew out, held her hand, and made her tea in a kitchen that didn't feel like home. When Ryan wanted to buy a house with his fiancée, I co-signed the mortgage and wrote the first $10,000 check without hesitation. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? But that email made me feel like a transaction, like I had been useful and now I wasn't. Like I had a shelf life, and it had expired. Back at the office, my boss, Martin, stopped by my desk. He's one of those rare men who remembers birthdays and how you take your coffee. He noticed something was off right away. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting a latte from the cafe downstairs on my desk. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say my daughter just disinvited me from her wedding, but instead I smiled and said I hadn't slept well. He didn't push. That small act of kindness, the coffee, the silence, nearly undid me. After all the noise in my head that morning, it reminded me that I still existed, that I still mattered, even if only quietly. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Sophie again. Her name lit up my screen like a spotlight. I didn't want voicemails, texts. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen to any of them. Not yet. I just sat there, sipping my latte, and thought, maybe it's time to stop being the one who always answers. Maybe it's time to stop playing a role in someone else's story when they won't let you on the stage. That afternoon, I made a decision that would shift the ground beneath all of us. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to act. After work, I didn't go straight home. I drove to Lakeview National Bank a few blocks down from the clinic. Derek, the branch manager, had helped me with everything, from setting up college savings to adjusting retirement contributions. He always greeted me by name. "Mrs. Mitchell." He smiled, standing to shake my hand. "What can I do for you today?" I sat down across from him and placed my purse on the floor. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "I need to cancel a wire transfer." He blinked. "The one to the Aspen venue?" "Yes, that one." Derek hesitated. "There may be a cancellation fee depending on timing, but may I ask why?" "The circumstances have changed," I replied without elaborating. He looked something up on his screen. "You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet, just in time." He paused, then looked up at me. "Are you sure, Mrs. Mitchell? $50,000 is a significant amount." I nodded. "I'm sure. $50,000. That was the amount I had planned to send next, on top of the $30,000 already gone. $80,000 total for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. I signed the necessary forms and left the bank without a second thought. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon sun caught on the windshield of my car, and for a moment I just stood there, letting the warmth hit my face. My chest ached. Not from regret, but from release. It was the ache of letting go of a version of myself who always said yes, who always found a way. By the time I got home, there were 9 missed calls from Sophie, 2 from Ryan. One voicemail simply said, "Mom, please don't do this." I turned off my phone. In the kitchen, I reached for the bottle of red wine I'd been saving for Thanksgiving. I hadn't opened it back then. Sophie was supposed to visit, but she canceled last minute. "Work," she said. I poured a glass, took it out to the porch, and sat in the fading sunlight. Birds chirped in the trees, a neighbor's dog barked. Everything felt still. Stillness didn't mean peace. It meant wait. It meant I was finally sitting with the truth, not rushing to soften it. For once, I allowed the quiet to press into me, to ask me hard questions I had spent years ignoring. And then the memories started coming in waves. All the birthdays I planned alone, all the holiday dinners where I pretended I wasn't waiting for a call that never came. All the small sacrifices that nobody noticed. The new shoes I didn't buy, the car I drove for 14 years, the vacations I postponed. I thought about Nathan's mother, the woman who barely knew Sophie, yet her opinion carried more weight than mine. The woman whose idea of family meant excluding the one person who had carried Sophie through every hard season of her life. I thought about the way Sophie signed off her email with "lol," as if watching your own daughter's wedding through a screen was a joke. And finally, I thought about myself, not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life that didn't revolve around being useful to people who only showed up when they needed something. That night around 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Ryan, still in his office clothes, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked uncomfortable, holding his phone in one hand like a shield. "Mom," he said, stepping inside before I could speak. "Why aren't you answering your phone? Sophie's freaking out." I shut the door calmly. "Hello to you too." He sighed, already pacing. She says you're not coming to the wedding. Now you're being difficult. I laughed. Difficult? For not attending a wedding I was uninvited from? He shifted uncomfortably. Nathan's parents are footing most of the bill, Mom. You know how traditional they are. I raised an eyebrow. Traditional? I already paid $30,000. I was about to give $50,000 more. That's not tradition. That's a bribe. He froze. Wait, you were sending another 50? Was, I said, sipping my wine. But not anymore. Ryan's face went pale. Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the food, the... Not my problem anymore, I said evenly. His voice rose. Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter. And I'm her mother, I said quietly. A mother who was told to stay home and watch from a screen. He ran his hands through his hair, visibly agitated. You always make everything about yourself. And that was it. That was the moment. Something inside me finally gave way. Get out of my house. What? You heard me, Ryan. Get out. Mom. No, I said, firm but soft. I've given everything I had, and I'm done being the villain in a story I wrote with love. Ryan stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked out. The door clicked behind him quietly, but it felt louder than any slam. I stood in the middle of my living room, heart pounding, and realized something startling. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning I woke up to 43 missed calls and a string of frantic messages from Sophie. They started with passive, then aggressive guilt. Mom, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish. Then the tone shifted. The venue just called. The payment didn't go through. We're going to lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. Nathan's parents are furious. They said this proves they were right about you. At 3:24 a.m., she sent, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I smiled into my coffee. Of course she didn't understand. Sophie had grown up with my sacrifices woven so tightly into her life that she never stopped to question where the comfort came from, the security, the stability. She just assumed it would always be there, that I would always be there. But not this time. Later that morning, while I was reviewing patient files at my desk, an email popped up in my personal inbox. The subject line read, Please don't ruin my wedding. I opened it without expectation. Mom, she wrote, I know you're upset about the live stream situation, but this is extreme. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the remaining balance by end of day Paris time, the caterer walks. Nathan's parents are beyond upset. They're saying this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the funds first. There it was. They were willing to talk about letting me attend now that the money was gone. Not an apology. Not a reflection. A negotiation. It was the cold math of convenience, where my value was measured in dollars, and inclusion was something to be earned, not offered freely. Not a single line about how it made me feel. No acknowledgement of the wound. Just urgency wrapped in entitlement. As if my presence at my own daughter's wedding could be bartered, bought, or sold. Depending on how generous I was feeling, I didn't respond. I closed the email and turned back to my work. Around noon, Martin stopped by my desk. Lunch? He offered that new Italian place that just opened. I almost declined, as I usually did, but something in me shifted. Maybe it was the clarity of the past 24 hours. Maybe I just needed to sit somewhere that didn't ask anything from me, so I nodded. I'd like that. Over pasta, he told me about his grandkids and how exhausting but beautiful it was to chase after them. His eyes were soft, real. He paused and said gently, Forgive me, Lorraine, but you seem lighter today. I surprised myself. I told him everything about Sophie, the email, the wedding, the money, and what I did. When I finished, he didn't judge. He didn't try to fix anything. He just said, Sometimes the hardest part of love is setting boundaries, especially with the people we've given the most to. He reached across the table and briefly squeezed my hand. I think he did the right thing. And it wasn't just the words, it was the quiet conviction behind them that made something inside me settle. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't cold, I was finally choosing myself. For the first time in a long time, I believe that too. When I returned to my desk, there were more calls, more texts, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time my silence spoke volumes. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, the sky was already dimming. The porch light clicked on automatically. Everything looked still. peaceful even. But there was someone sitting on my front steps. As I got closer, I recognized her. Maya. She stood up quickly, brushing invisible lint from her coat. Maya had been Sophie's best friend since 5th grade. She spent countless weekends at our house, baking cookies, watching movies, giggling in sleeping bags until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said softly, "I'm sorry to drop by like this." "It's fine," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the familiar walls like they held old echoes. I filled the kettle and waited. "Sophie sent you?" I finally asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "She's a mess. They lost the venue, the florist dropped out, Nathan's parents are threatening to cancel the wedding." I said nothing, placing 2 mugs on the counter. "She's panicking," Maya continued. "She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it." "Is that why you're here?" I asked. "To fix it?" She shook her head. "No. I'm here to ask, is there anything she can say or do to change your mind?" I paused. Was there? Would an apology change the way it felt to be excluded? To be used like a bank account? To be told you're not welcome unless your money is? I looked at Maya, still young, still hopeful. "No," I said quietly. "There isn't." Her shoulders sagged. "Not even if she apologizes?" I handed her a mug of tea. "Words are easy, Maya, especially when people are desperate, but the people who love you, they don't wait until you cut them off to see you." I watched her absorb that, her fingers tightening slightly around the mug. It wasn't anger I saw in her eyes. It was understanding, maybe even grief for a kind of love she assumed was unconditional until now. And I realized something too. She was the only one who showed up not to fix, not to plead, but to witness. And sometimes that's all we really want, to be witnessed. Maya looked down into her tea, nodding slowly. "I get it," she said, "even if she doesn't." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell." "You don't need to be," I replied. We stood in silence for a moment, 2 women from different generations, connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. And in that silence, I felt a strange kind of solidarity. Not in pain, but in perspective. A quiet knowing that letting go didn't make me loveless. It made me honest. Maya didn't stay long. She didn't try to argue. She just thanked me, hugged me gently, and walked back into the night. And I finally closed the door on a version of myself I had long outgrown. The wedding never happened, not as they planned anyway. They scrambled to find another venue, but everything was either booked or far too expensive. Without the money I had once promised, according to Ryan, they ended up doing a small backyard ceremony weeks later, just a few relatives and Nathan's parents. I wasn't invited, and this time I didn't need to be. In the weeks that followed, Sophie sent one more email, a long one. Emotional, half apology, half justification. I read it once, then archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace that comes with letting go, not in rage, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up not wondering who needed something from me, not bracing for another guilt trip disguised as love. I made a new rule for myself. If my presence is negotiable, then so is my effort. I go to work. I read novels. I joined a pottery class. I have dinner with friends who see me, not what I can give them. And I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm. Sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one you finally give to yourself. So the story has ended. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you're really still with me, then something in this story must have stirred something deep inside you. Maybe you too have been the one holding everything together, pouring from an empty cup, being the constant for everyone else, until you finally wondered, but who is there for me? Lorraine's story isn't just about a mother and a wedding. It's about that quiet breaking point we all feel, but rarely name. It's about the moment you realize love, when not reciprocated, becomes sacrifice without honor. And the healing begins when you choose to love yourself enough to walk away. You see, real love doesn't ask you to shrink, to stay silent, or to pay for your seat at a table you built. As Rupi Kaur once said, you do not just wake up and become the butterfly. Growth is a process. And sometimes growth means letting go of roles that no longer serve you, so you can meet yourself again with softness, not shame. So if you're still here, maybe you're standing at your own edge. Maybe you're learning, like Lorraine, That boundaries are not cruelty, they're clarity. That peace is not passive, it's earned. And if this story made you feel seen, even just for a moment, I invite you, like, share, and subscribe. Not because of numbers, but because someone else might need this story just as much as you did. Because sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one you finally give to yourself. Thank you for being here. Truly.